I'm bringing you guys something from the vault. This video here that you're about to watch is going to give you the 101, 102, and 103 on Cursor. By the end of these 20 minutes or less, you're going to be able to build your own project in a full-fledged software development IDE. This is the type of stuff that pros use, okay? I'm going to break it down in a very simple way from a guy that learned it while not being a pro himself. I don't come from a software background, I come from a business background. And if you're like that, and if you wanted to get into AI coding, vibe coding, or agentic coding, whatever you want to call it, this is your video. And if you want to explore even more, check out my school link in my bio as well. Let's get to the real meat and potatoes of it. We're talking Cursor, okay? So I found out about Cursor when I was in the middle of a build. I was using Bolt, and then I reached a dead end. I realized that I needed more coding muscle. I needed more AI intelligence. And I found out about Cursor, and since then, that has been a real driving engine behind these things. So this is Cursor. Go to cursor.com, sign up for an account, download onto your desktop, your Mac or Windows, and here you can see a little preview, and you're gonna see code. All right, let's rip the Band-Aid off, guys. You're gonna see code, and yes, technically you can do everything we're gonna do here without writing a single line of code, as they say, but you kind of are. You're already coding, right? Just by giving it a prompt, you're coding. And as you go along and learn code and ask this thing to do more code, you will, by osmosis, understand more things. And that's a good thing. You want that. You want to soak it all in. You want to have conversations with your chat about what it's building and why it's building it and why it's doing it that way and stuff like that. So you can understand the underlying structure and logic of all this stuff, okay? We don't have to worry about the syntax. I'm not here to tell you to do the comma, do the colon, and all that stuff. That's not the essence of vibe coding, right? The essence of vibe coding is to have a vibe, obviously, but also to more speaking in normal human language, right? Coding this stuff. But being able to speak a normal human language to do complex things like code does not remove the need or use of kind of intelligent language, precise language, right? Just like in real life, just like in sales and marketing or your day job, if you use precise words and you use good words and good instructions and all that stuff, you'll have a good outcome when communicating with others or your team, right? And so this is the same thing, right? We are essentially the senior editor, the senior developer, the product manager of some sorts, all that stuff all in one. And this thing is our very, very good right-hand man, right-hand woman of coding. However, it is sometimes too, it's too shallow, it's too surface level, right? It takes your words and just says, yes, sir, right away, without thinking things through sometimes. It can be so trying to please in a way, or so trying to do your actions and commands, that sometimes it just doesn't do that second, third pass in its mind to really understand what you're trying to ask for. So that's on you, that's your job. All right, so once you download Cursor, you're going to see a window like this, and then it's going to have a couple options. But the most common way that you'll probably do this is going back to your Bolt, going into your integrations, and then connecting your GitHub. If you followed along, you've set that up already. You're going to log into your GitHub, and then you'll create a repository. So I'll do that and show you. Okay, had to go into another file for a little reason there, but let's say you got authorized with GitHub. Now it should show up like this, okay? It's going to ask you to name your repository, and this one I'll just put demo. I'm going to create that repository. It's going to show up in GitHub here, hopefully connected to GitHub, start building, and it's going to do its thing. It's going to take a second there, and let's see how fast this thing is. I'm impatient. Oh, love it. Okay, so here it is, and you can see that what was being built within Bolt with all these basic file setups, and at this stage it's just essentially the tools that you need to get going, right? If you think about a car, it's the basic stuff. You need fuel, you need gas, you need the same thing. You need oil, you need tires with tire pressure and stuff like that. This is just the basic setup, right? We're not really talking much about the internals. Obviously, this one's a very simple demo, and all this stuff here is going to expand from this point forward. But that being said, you have a good foundation, and here it is. This is what it should look like, right? It's not too much or anything like that. These, if you don't know, are just different packages of kind of pre-made code, if you will. And some of these deal with UI, some of these deal with the logic, some of these deal with the interface, and so on and so forth, okay? So we'll talk about the specifics of each individual file, not each of them, but the important ones as we go along. But that being said, this is like your beginning set, okay? So now that you have this in GitHub, you have a repository, and you can go back into Cursor, and in Cursor, you can actually just open up or clone a repo by cloning from GitHub. And if it's connected, then you can do the same thing basically that you just did with Bolt. Connect it, create it, duplicate it, bring it in. So go ahead and do that. Okay, so a lot of the technical stuff done, quite simple. There'll be some going forward, but let's focus where we're at now. It'll ask you to create your folder on your desktop or your drive, right? Right before this window, it asks you where do you want to create it. You create it on your desktop for simplicity, or your drive, or wherever you have basically your local code, okay? Your local code is going to live on a file on your computer, right? What we created in GitHub is the remote code, and it's good for version control, right? Again, before I told you about kind of the parallel race between your local and your remote, and your local is going to be a literal local folder, and as you make adjustments to it, that will update locally through Cursor, and then you'll send it in for the next version for GitHub. All right, so it's constantly updating the two. So just a reminder. So now that we're here, you can see on the left-hand side, you have the different files and folders. You can open them and collapse them and take a look, and again, start to learn slowly but surely what each individual thing does. If you want, you can always come over here, ask in chat to click on some context. Let's just say you want package JSON for some reason. You can click on that and just tell me what this does. Okay, and you can have a conversation here about the individual components, and then as time goes on, you'll understand things, right? You can see here it's getting pretty technical, and if you want, this is a part of chat that you're always going to have to kind of find your own way to do, but tell it to use metaphors if you want. Tell it to explain it using a specific type of concept, if you will, right? There's a concept of a kitchen that people use all the time to talk about the relationship between these coding softwares and all that stuff, and it's very helpful. So you can do that. And there's many a times where I've been in the middle of a project and I've had to stop and I've had to go to the chat and say, hey, let's relax. Tell me in very simple human terms what is going on, and then the problem and the solution, right? So always feel free to tell this thing to stop. And remember, you can ask it to do that, right? It's intelligent enough to explain it to you in ways, and it can repeat and repeat and repeat until you get it. So you grasp the concept and then make the next best decision, right? You want to make your quality of decisions better, and you do that by having good information about your code and what you're building. All right, so now that we have that set up and we understand our way around this a little bit, we're gonna move into setting up our local environment. So when you open up Cursor, you're always going to have to set up your local environment and fire it up. And what that means is basically you're gonna be opening up a browser window with your build that is not live to the world. It's only gonna be here. It's literally only gonna be in your desktop right here. I can't see it, only for you, only for your eyes. So we can go ahead and just tell this to start the local. I hope that is obvious enough, but we'll see. And you'll see that it's going to go through a couple different functions here. And if it needs to install some things, it might ask you to install some things or explain that. And if you ever see an error in here, just feel free to copy that and paste it into this, and then let it do it a few times. And then if you see that it's not making progress, then you can remove this, take it to Claude, and then see if you can figure it out there. But as you can see here, should be working well. It's gave me a link. I'm going to see if it opens up. We have Google Chrome over here, and it looks like it should be firing up here in a second, but here we are. We have an issue. So let's go ahead and explore. All right, so I opened up this bottom window over here and then went back and I saw that we had a messed up one. I'm going to delete that, and then I'm going to tell it error, try again. Simple as that. All right, so it looks like it's been exploring for a little bit, and as you can see here, it is installing some dependencies. So this is basically, Cursor analyzing the system and then installing the things that it needs in order to do this. So imagine you're going for a workout, and you need water, you need a pre-workout, you need a coffee, and then you need your certain clothes. This thing is basically setting it all up so you can have a good workout, and as you can see, when you see this green Vitae and then this blue link here in the terminal, then you're going to be in good shape. You can hold control or a command and then click on this, and then it'll take you to your local. And in this local, you should see what you saw in Bolt, ideally. And I'm having trouble because I have two tabs open, so I'm going to close this tab. And then this was the one that I imported, and we're going to see over here that it should show up and we'll be off and running. Okay, not exactly just yet. So here is going to be your console, which I want you to be comfortable with and make your best friend because when it comes to debugging, like here, we're just having a blank screen, so we need to understand what's going on and debug. We're going to do F12 or function F12 if you have that necessity. And then you can see here that it's explaining that we don't have our Supabase environment. So basically, something was expecting Supabase credential and it was not getting the Supabase credential. So what I'm going to do is literally take this, put this over here, and then give that to the agent, and then see if it comes up with a plan or it just goes ahead and does it. By the way, side note, there is an option here to allow the chat to automatically make changes. I always turn it on. At the end of the day, you know, a lot of these things are not going to be, you know, all or nothing. So you can always revert back into the chat. That's my style. If you want to take your time and have it ask you permission to make changes within the file every time, free to do so, but I like to just let it ride. So that being said, it looks like it's coming up with a couple of solutions there, talking about different things. And as you can see, the final things here is going to be a list. So this is where it typically ends up. It's going to have a couple of different things that you might need to do and that it's going to do. And then right here, we have a little bit of both. So let me analyze this and get back to you. So essentially what this is saying is that we have Supabase in the code, but we don't have Supabase connected to the code. So first and foremost here, this one is creating a certain type of file. This is the .env file, which is going to be very important. So I'll go ahead and take some time to explain it. Your .env file is going to contain different keys. In this case, it's going to be the connections to Supabase, the Supabase URL and Supabase anon key, but the .env file is going to be safe. Okay, the .env file, as long as it is in this file, git ignore, it's going to be safe from being published. So there it is in git ignore. You always want to make sure that these two are connected. Git ignore exists, and then .env file is within that. And as it sounds, this file is what Git is going to ignore, what GitHub is going to ignore. So your API keys, which can cost you money, right? It's like your credit card number with the CVC code and all that stuff, your first name, last name, all that stuff. If someone has that, they can use it, right? So same thing with an API key. So that's going to make sure that it's protected and it stays local, so you can run some functions here, but it doesn't get published to the world and people can be nasty little punks and do some stuff with it. So that being said, here it is, giving us the two suggestions. So this one here is something for the coder to do. So it's telling me to do that, but I'm going to go ahead and tell it to do it. So I'm going to copy and paste that, and then we're going to work on number 2 over here. Okay, so I pasted that into it, and it successfully created the .env file, and then you'll see that it's kind of a different gray, right? It's a darker gray. So this here is going to tell you that it's in this file as well as this little symbol here, and that's exactly what you want, okay? That means it's safe. Now, getting into the actual components of the .env file, this can grow, but for right now, the only thing we have connected is going to be the Supabase URL and Supabase anon key. So I'll show you where to grab those if you have Supabase. If you don't, you can skip the next 30 seconds. So in Supabase, if you go down here to project settings and then go to data API, you will get the URL, which we'll copy, take into cursor, and put where it says URL right here. Cool. And then back over into Supabase, you'll go down 1 to API keys, and you'll see your anon public key, which is here. Copy that, paste that over, and put it over here. Then you're going to save this file, and it's going to automatically restart the server, and it's going to basically take that update and then run with that. So if that's all running appropriately and correctly, then this here, haha, should be there. So awesome, we did it. You got your local host set up. You'll know that by seeing this, and then that matches what was in cursor. And then as you can see, we can now mess around with this. We can play with the different buttons. We can go with the drop downs, and this is getting one step closer to going live. So I'm excited for you. This is awesome. This is when I started to feel like the jitters, okay? So let's get moving. Let's talk about editing with cursor. All right, so we've set things up. We are now in the proper place to start coding, and this is where the vibe can really get going, okay? We've set up the thing, and now it's just about making changes. We make changes to the UI, we make changes to the UX and the functions and the process and all that stuff. And this is where if you are able to block out some time, you're really gonna get a lot of progress because you can really get into that flow zone that we spoke about, okay? And a tool that I love to use for getting even more out of this is called Whisper Flow, actually. And it's basically just a voice to text thing. So I have a little shortcut on my keyboard, and I'll sit here with my microphone and I will speak into this and we will be vibing, you know? Sometimes what I'll do though is make sure that I clean up what I say. I'll go back into here and I'll clean it up so that it's more technical, more straightforward, and that does help because sometimes with the words you can get a little rambly. But you want to find that sweet spot where you're not exactly rambling, but you're not just stuck behind how fast you can type. You're kind of thinking through the process, you're flowing with it, you're learning the language of coding, and then you're applying that. So that being said, also, a second thing for like the flow of everything is if you have a second monitor, I suggest it because you can have Cursor pulled up in one, and then you can have the Google Chrome tab, your local server, pulled up in another, and you can see changes rapidly. Okay, so that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to show you how cool this is, how honestly, this is the most exciting part for me. This is where it gets really fun. When I know I have like time in front of me and the ability to like a list of changes that I want to make, and then the ability to just jam on it. Okay, so let's say we want to change some simple stuff like a background, right? We don't like that it's so plain Jane. We want to add a gradient. And then also we want to change a couple of different things in how this is laid out. We just don't like that it's laid out in this grid. We want to add maybe a list view. So we're going to take those one at a time. We're going to go into Cursor and we're going to do love it, need it to have a gradient background, black to red. Remember, make sure this is agent. And then side note here, I usually like Sonnet. You can click whichever one you like, or you can go auto. I typically go Sonnet. Again, I'm an Anthropic fanboy. We're gonna stick with that. So we go ahead and send, and then it's gonna do its thing, and then it's gonna think through the process, gonna make some decisions. Most times, this is a simple enough thing that it should go straight away. So once this starts, we're gonna switch over to the other tab so I can show you that in real time, it's gonna make these adjustments, and it's gonna make the adjustments to the code, but then you're gonna see it visually, and then we're gonna talk about how we're gonna save that and how we're gonna move on to the next set of changes. All right, so it took a second to get going, but as you can see, what it's doing is going through and finding the appropriate code. And if we click on this, we're gonna see that it's pulled up the code, and this is kind of like the general app code. And here, anything that is in red is what used to be. Anything that is in green is what it's basically proposing. And then if we do that, we'll keep that change. If we do this button, we'll keep all changes. But even if you go over here, it'll keep all changes. And if you just proceed, you'll essentially keep all changes as well. So this went ahead and made that change. And now we have a new gradient background, right? I didn't even have to refresh. It just did it. So that's really, really cool. Okay. So we have one UI thing. Let's see, it's not perfect. We still have all these other components. If we wanted to adjust them to match, then we'd have to adjust them to match. But that being said, you can see that now it's just a matter of, command after command, letting it do its thing. And then if you need to rewrite it or re-speak into it, then you can do that. So we did a small UI thing. Now we're gonna do a little bit of a bigger UI thing. Now what we're gonna do is please add a list view. Yeah, let's do it that way. And then it's going to go through. I think it should understand that. That's why I hesitated, because I think it should understand it instead of like a grid view or something like, awesome, yeah, see grid and lists. And if you really want to get a deeper dive, you can actually click on these little things here when it says thinking or to-dos and stuff like that. And if it's not expanded, click on it, see what it's actually doing. If you read, that's what it's reading the things. It's saying it's reading. And then if it ever says thought or thinking, typically it does that when it's like a bit more complex, then it'll show you what it's actually thinking through. It'll show you like verbal reasoning, how it's going about making these changes. But that being said, I'm gonna actually go back here live and I'm gonna wait here so we can see if it's going through. It's doing its thing. I'm actually gonna do this, see if I have enough screen for that. It's going through still. It's making some changes. It's adding 35 lines, adding 1, 2, removing 1, and it's creating a component, some stuff like that. Again, if you don't understand this stuff, don't worry. I learned over time and still don't understand a percentage of it all. But that being said, it seems like it's doing its thing. And where is our list? Come on. There we are. Okay. I saw a change. Saw a list view. Oh, there it is. So it's not exactly where I thought it was going to be. That's totally fine. But I did think there was going to be some kind of toggle. Let me put full screen. And now we have the list view. Ooh. Oh, there we go. I was being impatient again. But there we go. Now we have the list view. And now we have the grid view. Okay. So that is how you make changes, right? You make changes like this over and over and over again till you get what you want. And then as things go and get more complicated, like you want to describe a workflow, like if someone is a certain type of user, they should have access to a certain type of thing, and then that should route them to a certain way. It's all the same thing. It's all building blocks, right? And again, what I recommend highly is to have chats in this. Go into the ask mode and then tell it if it understands. Ask it, do you understand, right? Say what you want to say, ask it if it understands, and then ask it what do you plan on doing. And then it'll show you step by step. And then that way you can really get a good sense of how it's thinking through, how it's reacting to your language, and you can really get better at refining your prompts, right? This is prompt engineering at the end of the day, okay? And little side note here to end this off. One time in my past, I was operating a CNC wood routing machine. CNC wood routing machine is like this big drill that goes around and cuts out pieces of wood, right? Grinds out pieces of wood layer by layer. And it had this crazy complicated code. But the way you had to think about something like that is that the machine is not wrong, okay? The machine may misunderstand your command, but it is fundamentally doing what it was told, right? It's a robot, right? And this is kind of similar. It's a robot, it's a code. And yes, you know, it has like that nice natural language feel to it, but fundamentally underneath it, it's still a robot, and it's still just doing the best that it can do with your commands. So in the same way that if I didn't tell that thing exactly 4.25 centimeters, it would go ahead and do something else. If I said about 4 centimeters, that was not a proper command. Then same thing as this, right? If I'm not precise, if I'm not careful, then sometimes it'll just not give me the result that I thought it was giving it. But again, that kind of comes back to me. It's my responsibility, and it's going to be your responsibility to get the most out of these things, okay? And you have the power, okay? You have the power, you have the vision, you have the goal, you have everything that you need, right? You've used SaaSes before, you've used products before, you've used online tools before, so you know what a good one feels like. Just more and more as time goes on, you'll carefully understand how to direct something, in this case this, which is essentially, you know, a team of developers, but you'll learn how to direct this to create what you're envisioning. Okay, so that being said, we're gonna cut it off here. That is the basics of Cursor. And really what I'd like you to do at this point is to start up that process, get to this point where you're able to make commands in a local server, and then you're hopefully have done everything else up until this point too, so that you're not running into technical issues, right? Again, the whole point of this whole place is called Vibe Code Cowboys. So we want to get to the place where we can vibe, where we can flow, where we can create, we can focus on this, and we're not focused on the technical stuff too much, okay? Obviously, that's a part of it, but once we get all those technical things figured out, which as you saw is a little bit of copy and pasting, just a little bit of continuous action, then eventually you get to a point like this where we can really start jamming, okay? And that's what's next. We're gonna start jamming on a couple of projects, and you're gonna see kind of start to finish how things go, how everything gets connected, how everything goes and moves into stages, and we're gonna move into that fun stuff there. So hope to see you on the next one.